developed three scenarios. Those three scenarios are a best case scenario, which would be a closure of what we experience right now with a potential reopening and growth in the economy starting the new fiscal year. And we anticipate that that's going to those impacts are going to be in the millions of dollars, even in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, we anticipate some significant reductions in revenues, upwards of over, and this is preliminary numbers, upwards of over $4 million impact to sales tax, TOT, and different revenue streams. So what does that mean? Well, that sales tax is used to fund our operations. That's how we fund our firefighters. That's how we fund our police officers. That's how we fund engineering. And so we're revising those numbers, and we expect to refine them a little bit more. We have a meeting with HDL next week to go through that and refine those numbers a little bit more. But I just want to be very transparent and very clear that the fiscal reality and what we're anticipating and what we expect to see is going to be difficult. We're going to be challenged, and it's going to have an impact on us. So some of the actions that you will hear about, or some of the actions that we will take, are not because we necessarily think that it's the best or the greatest or the easiest decision to make, but it's the fiscal reality that we have to deal with. And that's my responsibility that I've got to look out for. I can't wait until 3 months down the road or our sales tax remitted to the city isn't coming in at what we expected it to be. I've got to deal with the reality of what we have. Over the last few weeks, I've spoken to a number of business owners who have had to lay off employees, that have had to furlough employees and dip into reserves to pay bills. I don't want us to be into that situation if we don't have to. So that's why difficult decisions will be coming. And I just want the council to know that those are difficult decisions to have with the management team. Those are difficult decisions to be made, but they have to be made to look out for the best interests in the health and the fiscal health of the city of Hemet. I want to finally just end off with one thing, and I'll make this brief. And I sent this email to the council, and I really wanted everyone to hear about this so that everyone had the information. And so I'll go ahead and just share this email that I sent to the council. Good afternoon. I wanted to provide an update on the city's current budget and where we stand. On March 10, 2020, I provided an overview of the budget process we would follow for the upcoming fiscal year. Prior to this discussion, staff presented a financial model to the mayor and city council for review. This model projected out revenues and expenditures for the next 5 years. The link for these documents can be found here, and I provided the link to that. As you can see in the model, if we kept everything status quo, we anticipated a $5.2 million deficit for the upcoming fiscal year. I made it very clear on January 28, 2020, with the financial model presentation, that any change in the economy would completely wipe out the projections we prepared. Unfortunately, that reality is hitting us square in the face right now. We completed our first week of budget reviews, and we got through the following operations: library, public works, human resources, engineering, PD, and fire. Each operation was given a target budget to reach. This target was calculated by taking anticipated revenues for this fiscal year and divvying up the revenues so that we could have a balanced budget. For police and fire, 72% of revenues were allocated to public safety and the balance to the various general fund operations. Each operation was then asked to build their budgets and not exceed their target. This is particularly challenging for public safety, as their budgets have risen significantly over the last 3 years due to increases in PERS rates, workers' compensation rates, and commitments to our public safety partners. Some of these increases total $2 million in just this year alone, particularly challenging while sales tax decreases in our community. The council will have some significant policy decisions to make in the next few months. At minimum, this includes the funding of approximately 6 public safety personnel and over $1 million in public safety maintenance and operation costs that the general fund cannot carry. This is in addition to the existing operations funded by Measure U. The council will have the option of utilizing Measure U revenues, its emergency reserves, or reductions in workforce. This scenario is only made worse as our budget targets did not anticipate COVID-19 and the impacts to our local economy. a reality that we need to face head-on in order to do what is best for the city of Hemet. Staff is working tirelessly to revise our budget estimates for the current year and the upcoming year. This is an ever-changing situation, but all of our management team has come together to strategically plan and provide solutions. The executive team is working together to accomplish the same goal: fiscal solvency and service delivery for our city in the middle of a pandemic. I am extremely thankful and proud of the leadership they have all shown during this time. Our employees continue to provide services to our community in the midst of our challenged reality, and I am honored to lead the team. Unfortunately, we have had to pull back a number of job offers to try and lessen our expenditures and preserve our flexibility. I have made it clear to our management team and employee associations that our employees are the wheels that keep our operations moving, but there will be difficult decisions to be made. Given that reality, we are planning operational changes in the fire department to include reducing overtime to lessen our expenditures. We will place Medic 2 in service at Station 5. These stations will go into effect in the upcoming week. This is needed to respond to our current reality. This means lessening expenditures while we can and not await a decrease in sales tax remitted to the city. Every day of inaction now will require more drastic action in the future. This change will not result in any reduction of personnel in the fire department. All personnel will remain employed with this action. While some may argue that the budget is adopted and we should spend the money and deal with our new reality in the new fiscal year, this is not the responsible action to take. While I know this is a difficult and unfortunate situation, immediate and decisive action is needed to combat what we know is coming: reductions in revenues. As the chief executive of the city, it is my responsibility to ensure that we are managing our operations while being mindful of our fiscal reality. I am forced to look ahead now and mitigate budget concerns that could be detrimental to the future of Hemet. These actions are necessary to ensure the viability of Hemet. Measure U is also not the sole solution. The financial model illustrated that maintaining the status quo and utilizing Measure U fund balance will only prolong the inevitable: fiscal insolvency. Utilizing Measure U fund balance to cover our existing operations will result in the inability of the city to maintain its emergency reserves in just a couple of years. Our current economic condition only means this will come sooner rather than later. And in that, I included a graph from the fiscal model of what we anticipated our revenues or our emergency reserves to be with Measure U and the general fund combined, and we would be unable to meet our emergency reserve in just a couple of years. We must be mindful that decisions at the state and the county level are forcing our businesses to take drastic action. Unfortunately, that has an impact to us, as those businesses are the biggest drivers of our revenues. I have spoken to many business owners this week who have laid off or furloughed employees, shut down their operations, and dipped into reserves to pay bills. The city of Hemet will not be immune from the same impacts that our business community is experiencing, and I believe we are only seeing the beginning. And then I ended the email with that. So that's all the update that I had to provide. Both chiefs are here if they would like to add anything to that. Happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Thank you very much, Chris. I continue to be amazed at just how much we're able to accomplish under these less than ideal circumstances, and the adaptability of all of our staff in making the necessary adjustments. The creativity and approach to their respective job responsibilities it's heartwarming to see how they've buckled down and they're trying to make it work. So,
Chris, I appreciate you pursuing fiscally responsible approaches rather than thinking of furloughs or layoffs. So I'm sure our staff appreciates that immensely. And I know it's been a difficult season for staff and you to manage all these things, but appreciate the approaches that you've been taking.
I have a question for you, and this is kind of a COVID problem, and I'm thinking maybe the funding on this could be paid for with our emergency, or at least the 75%. But right now, with parks closed, there are literally homeless people that have no place to urinate or defecate, and it is on our street. And so, we're dealing with a pandemic of a contagious disease, but yet we're locked down, but we're spreading poop on our streets. There's got to be something we can do. I mean, even if it's a service that we pay for, I think that we would be reimbursed if this is an emergency situation. I don't know if that would apply, but maybe you could look into something like that, because right now, homes are not even taking the homeless people that are willing to get off the streets because of the lockdown and everything. And right,
That's a very difficult one, but yeah,
it is
we'll
very
follow
difficult.
up.
And I don't know that, not that we would need to open our bathrooms or whatever, but maybe we could, if we had a service, maybe that would be something that could be billed to and that's why we called the state of emergency, right?
One of the issues we had with our restrooms was that we didn't have the mechanism by which to decontaminate and deal with those issues. And so
Right, definitely.
that was one of the drivers in closing those facilities down.
Yeah, and so when you guys did it, I thought maybe this would be something that we could even get, partially reimbursed for. So, another item, and I think that we could probably talk about it a little bit more in depth tomorrow, but I feel obligated to speak about it tonight. There's been discrepancies in information shared by staff, and I was in a conversation with our local hospital and found out some things, and they were in a public meeting, so I think that you and I need to have a conversation about that.
I know we briefly talked earlier today, but it was right before this council meeting.
I know,
Yeah,
so
so we'll
if we can,
follow up.
absolutely.
Comments? Okay. Michael?
Well, I have a whole lot of stuff to talk about, but it's already 10 after 10, so I'm going to keep it brief. When the public health officer came out with his mandate about a week ago, threatening arrest of people in violation of not wearing masks and not staying home for critical or essential tasks or whatever, I find it ironic because that's what a totalitarian state does. In the last I checked, we live in a constitutional republic, and we don't have that. Weren't supposed to. The public health officer came out with those mandates and didn't run it past the Board of Supervisors. I did make a comment to you, Chris, and to Eric in a text message when that came out. The next day, the sheriff came out with a public message that he was not going to be arresting people for not wearing a mask. So our sheriff has some sense, and with that, I know that he's been in constant contact with local law enforcement chiefs, and they're all on the same page, so I applaud them for that. Eric did send out an email to the council with a ordinance or a resolution that was passed by a previous council, and he said that because this resolution was passed, that we're kind of mandated to it because it was a resolution passed by the council. And yet I remember Carly pointed out a resolution at the beginning of this council meeting that is now going to be violated, that was passed also. But this resolution was passed June 8th, 1982, and it's still in effect today. I would like to make a motion that this ordinance or this resolution be rescinded because it's out of date. It's 35 years old, almost 40 years old. I was 10 when it was passed. Because apparently our city attorney is saying that we're still bound to this resolution, when yet the resolution for the Measure U funds is just that. It's a guidance that we don't have to abide by in perpetuity. So either should this one. With the city, I know the city, you and I, Chris, had this conversation about the ability for residents to snitch on their fellow residents for not covering up. Since this resolution is in effect, it's the under the authority of the public health officer to enforce that, not the city of Emmett. So I say that we put out a PSA to our residents that say, if you want to report somebody, if you feel inclined to report somebody for a violation of the public health officer's order, you need to contact the public health officer. That's not something that's not a police emergency and doesn't warrant a 911 call. Please do not call 911 for if reporting a violation of the public health order. Contact the public health officer's office and let them deal with it, because that's what their authority is, and it's under their purview under this. So again, I would like to make a motion that
They do have a new app for that.
Say again?
The county has a new app for that.
Yeah, they have it. Oh, and I did go on their app, and I did say that whoever came up with that app should be fired. Because it's all anonymous. But I do want to say that that I think it's still imperative that people protect themselves. This is a virus; it is spread, but it's an ever evolving situation. And now the health officer from CDC, who's been advising the President of the United States, is saying that if you maintain the social distancing and you're within 6 feet of somebody for less than 10 minutes, your likelihood of contracting this is very limited. I'd also like to point out that there was a letter that came out today from the Attorney General of the United States of America that states that they will be looking at state and local governments that are enforcing stay-home orders on religious institutions. In the email that Eric sent out, there was a notice that the Riverside County Public Health Officer put out got a TRO, a temporary restraining order, against Grace Baptist Church in Corona for a violation of it, and they were doing a parking lot drive-up service. So I just warn our government officials and government employees that you still have a constitution to abide by, whether or not there is a pandemic. Because the last I checked, the Constitution doesn't go away because there's a pandemic. There's no language in there for that. So I do have a lot more stuff I would like to talk about, but with respect to everybody else's time, I will cut that short. But again, I did make a motion to rescind this resolution from 1980.
Are we going to put it on the future agenda items motion, or what do you
But it says that it's,
do right now?
the resolution is that permitting the county health public health officer of Riverside County to enforce public health rules, regulations, and orders within the city.
What's the number?
The number is 2106, dated June 8th, 1982.
It's probably something that requires some more discussion. I think there was some other indications in the email that said that if the city chose not to do that, it would potentially have to have its own medical director or something along those lines. So I think it probably makes sense to have that for a future council discussion and talk about that.
Well, again, it goes back, it talks in here that it's up to the public health officer to enforce it, not our local law enforcement. So again, I say that if people are calling 911, don't call 911 to report people violating the public health order. Contact the public health officer. That's not a police emergency. Okay.
That's why there's the other Smith asks.
I said that person should be fired.
So are we going to, do you want to put that on the future agenda item? Because I don't think we can vote on that right now.
I think this needs to be addressed at some point
Right.
in time.
So are you going to amend that to say a future agenda item, or are you just saying that?
I mean, I put out the motion, there was no second.
Okay, so I'll second that you want to put it on the
You just kept talking.
yeah, right?
I said I had a lot to talk about, and I
Now, and you're,
said it down to 5 minutes.
I'll second that, and I don't know if you want to put it on a future agenda item, because I don't think we
If
can,
you want a future agenda item.
yeah,
Absolutely.
there you go.
Okay.
Would you like to amend your motion to make that a future
Okay, well,
agenda
I can
item?
amend it so that it needs to be rescinded at a future agenda item.
All right, I'll second it for you. There you go.
Okay, discussed.
Okay, and you're okay with second on that? Okay, we have a motion and a second to add a future agenda item to address that 1982 resolution
2106.
2106. Okay?
Aye.
Yeah.
Here.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That passes. All right, in deference to the hour, anybody have any critical things that you need to report?
Just one.
Of course you do.
Well, no, because this affects you guys. I'm getting a lot of, shall I say, questions, emails, phone calls about the WCE and what the hell is all this stuff I'm getting in the mail. Now, I still haven't gotten anything about WCE, but believe me, every senior park and senior community in Hemet has, and they all know my phone number. And they want to know what the hell it's all about. So I say, hey, talk to the mayor and Bonnie.
And I've got nothing.
I've actually had a few emails and I've responded to answer a couple of questions that I saw on Nextdoor. But generally, I refer them
Yeah.
to read the document
Well,
that they're provided.
WCE needs to have better information that's going out to the people, because this is
Yeah.
coming out in May,
And that,
and we're right there.
yeah, and I
It's not our
just got
responsibility to do it.
I just got an email today that a letter went out with a typo in it referring to the implementation in May for the cities of Norco, Paris, and Wildomar. Well, they launched this month. So there's a corrected letter.
They need to get it together.
There's a corrected letter coming out.
Okay.
So,
And I got a piece of good news. At RCTC first mobile telecommunication meeting this last Wednesday, we unanimously, -1, voted to not go forward with the ballot initiative for half-cent sales tax for streets and roads. The plan is still going to be approved at our May meeting, which will prioritize some of the issues that we have for traffic relief, but the tax will not be on the November ballot.
okay. Anybody have a burning
To go home?
thing to report? Okay?
I do want to mention about ad hoc committee for Ford Avenue. You know, when we collectively chose the color palette for this cement stamped brown, with a brown rock, how come it's beige?
I think they also came back and said they didn't think our choice was one of their choices, so,
I guess they made their own.
so that's Caltrans.
So when they complain about it, you could say contact Caltrans.
They ran out of money.
It's a redo.
Change order.
Anything further from the city manager that you'd like to add?
I have nothing else.
Okay.
I think staff wants to go home.
All right, we stand adjourned until our next meeting, which is 28th. All right. Ouch. No.